Hello, and welcome to another episode of Credit After Dark. I'm the host, attorney Brian L. Ponder, also known as Brian the Credit Lawyer. Tonight, we're going to bring on a guest and talk about credit. Let's jump right into it. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. How are you, Brian?
Doing very well. Alexia, is that correct?
Yes, that is.
Well, welcome to Credit After Dark, where
It's
we talk about credit.
a pleasure to be here.
Well, what is your experience with credit? Do you study your credit report, check your credit? What's your experience with credit?
Yes. My experience with credit is I'm very aware of my credit and the score. I do keep track of my report. Actually have a family credit repair business. I look at credit constantly, different reports constantly. So I'm very familiar, but I guess just because you're familiar with something doesn't mean that you kind of still know your path and journey with that particular subject.
Okay, so are you part of the family credit repair business?
Yes, I am.
Okay, excellent, excellent, excellent. Go you. Well, that's excellent. So, regarding your own credit, how would you describe your own credit?
I definitely say that my credit is an average African American score. I definitely see myself building my credit and taking it further, the steps to build it. But I feel confused on and conflicted on how to go about doing it the proper way and the right way that fits me and my budget and, um, to a fast right route to success with a good credit score, a better.
Okay, okay. And you had mentioned your score is like average.
Yeah.
A few days ago, we had another episode where we pulled up some average credit scores by race, and we did the black average score. What do you think the average score is for a black person in the United States? Credit score, FICO score.
I definitely say from a 550 to a 650.
Okay. Well, I think it's 2019 was 677 was
Oh,
the average score, and that's considered to be a good credit score in that range. Um, and so, is that right along what you were thinking as far as where you land in the
yeah,
average category?
more at the numbers that you're talking. I'm more in 667 around there.
Okay. So you're in that average range
Hmm.
as well. How do you utilize your credit?
So I think that's the biggest part. Actually utilizing it. I think that the biggest part of having credit is using it, and a lot of us don't really want to use it the wrong way. So it kind of scares us away from actually using it at all. And you know,
Barely.
I'm 21.
Oh,
Um,
oh, okay.
I've not had much reason to really use it in my own opinion, but I see that I could be utilizing it more. I've never really financed like anything as far as like cars or anything of that sort, furniture or anything. So I pay cash for everything that I have. If I
Hmm.
have the cash, I pay outright. And my issue has always been kind of thinking the mentality of, well, will I be able to keep up with these reoccurring payments? And
Okay.
um, I mean, also with me being young and new to credit, I'm not really offered big lines of credit or anything like that to really utilize it because I do know that I would want to stay in the 30% utilization range when it came to maybe getting a credit card or something of that sort. But I definitely like I've never had a credit card. Really, I've actually never had a credit card. I think this year in particular that just passed was my first time ever taking a step into trying to do something along those lines of getting a credit card or something like that. And I use Self. I don't know if you're familiar with that platform,
Mm-hmm.
Self.
Mm-hmm.
But that is like the only move I ever made as far as trying to make reoccurring payments. Um, and keep in mind, they have a card with their system. I never use. I made my payments, but I never used my card.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just made my payments, and then like I guess my mindset around it is just so kind of misconstrued because I really, like I said, I never used my card. I also overpaid. So I would
Okay.
have a set amount, but I would pay over because I was like trying to pay that line of credit off
Mm-hmm.
faster, or, I know it doesn't make sense, but I definitely, um, I just didn't feel comfortable with um, not knowing what would happen because my income fluctuates.
Sure.
And so just not knowing what next month or the next opportunity would hold, I pretty much would overpay. And I paid off my line of credit, I think a year earlier than I was actually supposed to. So
Okay. When you paid it off, well, do you monitor or track your credit score?
I actually do. I use Credit Karma just like a lot of
Okay.
people, but I have used like Privacy Guard and things of the such before
Okay.
to check it out. And
Okay. So I wanted to touch on a few things you talked about. So right now you do not have a credit card,
no,
correct?
I don't have a credit card.
What you
A
have?
lot of platforms that track your credit will suggest credit cards that fit for you. And I've definitely been open to like getting a secured credit card, but I think you kind of need the capital to like put down on that secured credit card to be able to kind of utilize. You're using your own money, so you know. I think for me, I kind of wanted to build up a big enough capital in my head to kind of put down on that credit card so that I have a higher chance of um, being showing good reports.
Okay. Okay. Well, as far as credit cards go, they're probably the most effective ways to build your credit. So when people like yourself interested in building your credit cards do that because credit cards are what's called revolving credit. Revolving credit is credit that you could use and pay off. And the scoring system, which is done by the Fair Isaac Company, which is called the FICO score, the utilization of your available credit comes from the revolving credit category.
Hmm.
And so, for example, you got the self account. The self account, at least for the many years I've seen it, is what's called an installment account. So when you get the self account, it actually doesn't consider the utilization, meaning the balance versus the limit, because the type of account it is installment. So what self does, it adds to your credit mix, which is a very, very small percentage of your credit score. I think maybe 10% may be
Hmm.
credit mix.
It is.
Now, with respect to you keeping your credit cards, your future credit cards below 30%, that's actually a myth, and that myth comes from a 30% number. But the myth is the 30% actually is the percentage of your credit score that comes from your utilization of those revolving credit lines. And so 30% of your score comes from your revolving credit utilization. Many people see that 30% and think that means they need to stay at 30% or below to have a good credit score with a credit card. The truth is, the lower the utilization, the better the credit score. So 30% is not bad, but if it was at 0%, meaning you pay your card off every month completely, that's the most advantageous place to be if you're looking to have the highest score. Does that make sense?
Most definitely.
So I encourage you, like you're on the right track. And by the way, with your score, you would qualify for a unsecured credit card
Mm-hmm.
because of the score range. You do have an average credit score, so you would be able to get into a unsecured credit card. The only thing is, you have so many cards to choose from. You want to choose a card that will grow with you in your credit. So, for example, a credit union card or other cards that will grow with you. You don't want to jump into a card that maxes out ever in the $500,000 range. So you want to scout out a credit union or a credit card company that will grow with you with credit limit increases as your credit standing increases. And you're 21, but you have bills and expenses, and so you mentioned you don't want to do recurring payments, so you can consider doing this. When you get a credit card, utilize it for your common expenses. Don't treat it like a line of credit or credit card. Treat it like cash, like you're spending already. So your groceries, your gas, and things like that.
And
Instead
that's
of
definitely
use
a
that.
bad, so sorry,
Go
but
ahead.
that's the a plan I've had, but I definitely don't think that I've been able to get anything unsecured. I haven't found anything available for me or
Mm-hmm.
secured. Um, but I definitely feel like if I had the credit card, I'd use it in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't think that I've ever been like too excited to actually get it.
Sure.
And I kind of want to break away from that. So, what do you recommend? Like, are some good, like, do you feel a credit card is a good first step in building your credit?
Oh, absolutely. It's actually almost impossible to really get a high credit score without the credit card. If you see another episode, when I first got started building my credit, I got a Bank of America secured credit card for $300. It took me into the high 600s where I was able to buy a home. So without that card, I would have not achieved a
Yeah.
score high enough to really be able to do a transaction. So I absolutely encourage that. Well, as far as what card you can get with credit unions, outside of credit unions, what you can do, and what I'll do probably is create a list, and I'll put in description of some good cards to consider. But starting out, since you don't know what you may qualify for, I suggest you utilize companies that have pre-qualification applications that you can submit. And what that means is it won't create a hard inquiry to your credit score, but you can input your information and it can do a soft pull on your credit, which won't affect your score and won't show up, and see if you qualify for the card. And if you do, they'll give you a decision of a possible limit that you would get. And if it's a decent card and you're qualified, then you can proceed and go with that card. So I recommend looking out for pre-qualification applications so that you can, sort of play around with it and not waste or hurt your credit with inquiries that you're not going to, need.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
It definitely does. I actually have searched and ventured out and do some pre-qualifying application for a few credit unions, and I've been denied. I haven't been approved for a lot of things. So I've tried store credit cards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've just been denied. So that's why I feel like
Okay.
it's like, okay, so it's big on getting that secured card. I'm getting
Okay.
for me in my case personally. I've definitely tried. I've definitely you know, even with not pre-qualifying, just doing hard inquiries on my credit just to see what I,
Sure.
offered or what I could get.
Hmm.
And I've been denied. So would you suggest a secured credit card, and how much do you suggest that I put of my own capital down for it?
Yes, I do suggest it. And since you've tried some pre-qualification applications and were denied, a secured credit card would be a great place for you to start. Now, all secured credit cards are not created equal. You mentioned Credit Karma. There's a lot of suggested cards on Credit Karma that I don't suggest you go with.
Mhm.
The key is, and I'm going to post a website again that's pretty good that allows you to learn about some different secured cards. Here's the key thing you want to look for in a secured card. You want a card that will graduate to unsecured. Very important. What that means is if you do a card, say for $300 as your secured credit card, that means your credit limit will be $300, and $300 will sit in a savings account to secure that card. And the whole point is if you don't pay off the card, they can just get the uh, secured funds that's in the savings account. Uh, a card that graduates means that after a certain period of time, 6, 9 months, 1 year, they will unlock your funds and let it be a regular credit card. So that's something very important. You don't want to get any secured credit card that does not graduate. Does that make sense?
No, perfect sense.
Next, you want a card that's going to grow in your limit. Um, by the way, so that means you don't want a card that's what's called perhaps a subprime or small limit card. They're on Credit Karma. Some of these cards will never get above $1,000. They just don't have those kind of limits. So that's something you want to look out for. Off the top of my head, some cards that do that would be Discover It, Navy Federal, different credit unions that have these types of cards. That's why I recommend credit unions. Navy Federal, you have to have a family member that's in the military to get you in there, but other credit unions have their own criteria. And I'm going to create a list and put it in the comments section. But yeah, so secured credit card is the way to go, but only if it will graduate to unsecured and only if it can grow with you in your credit. So when your credit improves, you can revisit, do another soft inquiry most of the time, and do a what's called a credit limit increase. And so, yeah, that would be great for you since you're in that fine area
Yeah.
where the unsecured cards are just not accepting you, but you can get a secured card. Now, as far as a limit, you want to do as much as you can. The higher the limit, the better. But starting out with $500 is perfectly fine. Manage that, and then next thing you know, you'll get that money back. And then once you see your credit score go up, say bumps past 700, then you can go back and look for credit limit increases. Some banks, credit unions, they will get your card unsecured and automatically increase your limit. Navy Federal would do that when you
Mhm.
start out with some of their cards. Other credit unions may do the same thing. So that's what that's what you can try, and it definitely will work. You just have to research and get uh, with the right credit union, get the right card that's going to graduate and grow with you.
Mhm.
Is that your cat?
Peter.
Oh, okay. All right, Peter.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely gonna take everything that you said into account, and I'd love to, look at the links that you have to kind of educate me a little bit more, um, and make the first steps and actually getting that card, that secure card, if that's the only option I kind of have right now.
Right.
Building
Yeah.
from.
Right. And remember, use it like cash, meaning when you use the card after the charge hits, before your bill is due, basically pay it off before the end of the month. Pay it off completely. So treat it
Yeah.
like cash. Don't treat it like an extension of your beyond your cash. Treat it like cash, and before you know it, your credit you'll notice your score goes up. And I also recommend myfico.com as a credit monitoring program, because that's the company that produces your score. And what I really like about it is, as your score goes up or down, it will tell you that it did right away, and it will
Yeah.
tell you why it does it.
Now, does it monitor the like every time it's your credit's being ran, as well, like as far as just everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
Or
new inquiries, new activity will come up as an alert.
okay.
And I recommend people get what's called their Premier 3B product. That means that they will give you an updated credit report monthly,
Okay.
and it monitors information on all three consumer reporting agencies. And in between each monthly report, in real time, you'll get alerts for inquiries, changes in your credit report throughout the month. And so I think it's very valuable, especially for someone that's building their credit and pays attention to their credit.
Okay.
All right.
And I know this may be a bit personal, but what things do you utilize to build your credit, your personal?
Well, I utilize credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
I utilize my FICO, and that's really it. I mean, I have a mix of credit
Mm-hmm.
just from financing different items, so my mix is already there. But most of it, mostly to build my credit, I've utilized revolving credit. That really is the most effective way to build your credit. And I tell people that's looking to have a credit mix, don't worry about pursuing the mix, because once you have that revolving credit, it will shoot you up into a high credit score range.
Okay.
When you buy a home, when you finance a car, that's going to give you the mix that you're looking for. So that will come naturally. So you don't really have to chase the self loans and things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. And you mentioned earlier that you paid it off early. The reason I asked you about your score is because I've tried all of that just to sort of sample these things to try it out for people before I recommend it. What happens is when you pay it off early, it actually tanks your score because now you have a closed account. So people that if you do have a self, don't try to accelerate it by paying more or paying it off sooner, because that open active account is more favorable than a closed
Yeah.
installment account. So take it from me, because I've tested these
Yes.
platforms just to see what it will do to your score, and that's what happens. But you
Yes.
recover from it closing, but just don't rush to close it like you were mentioning.
Yeah. I can't be an overachiever and everything.
Right. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for your
Credit
time.
After Dark. I hope I was able to give you some pointers that may help you in your credit journey. You have a long
You go.
way to go with credit. You get started. And I think this is a good point. You're starting at a very good point. A lot of young people may abuse their credit with credit cards, but you're starting off nice and fresh, and you have a real bright credit future, I would say,
Yeah.
if you follow those things.
Well, I definitely will, and I'll be looking out for more information, in the description to be able to, kind of guide me into those steps that I want to take. And um, I also want to ask a little bit about the interest rates, just with the type of credit cards you were describing for me to kind of look for. Would I
Sure.
be having a higher interest rate with a card that, follows those type of things as far as, you know, um, being able to be unsecured eventually,
Sure. Sure.
able to
Good. Gr-
graduate?
Great question. So yeah. So interest rates. A lot of people will disagree or may gawk at what I'm saying. You don't really need to care about the interest rate at this point. Reason being, you're going to have zero interest
Okay.
when you pay your cars off, like I'm
Yeah.
suggesting.
Yes.
So interest only affects you when you carry a balance over a period of time past a month.
Okay.
Obviously, at 1 month is not much, but over a period of time, when you make minimum payments, the interest really just compounds
Mm-hmm.
how much you're going to owe back. But when you use the card, like we discussed earlier, you pay zero interest. It's like using cash. It literally it could be a 30% interest rate card, but you will pay 0% because you're not interest is not touching you at all by making the payments in a prompt fashion. Now, later when you get a big credit card that you plan to use, for purchases that you will pay over time, yeah, with your high credit score, you're going to have a card with the best rate. But for the purposes where you are, you're not interest is not going to affect you because you're not going to be carrying balances.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a plan. I'm thankful for your advice and your
All right.
help, and I'll be taking it into a high level of consideration and
Excellent.
action towards it. So, thank you.
Well, thanks. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you again on Credit After Dark.
I hope so. You guys have a blessed one.
You too. Bye.